The Catherine's surrender left an uneasy quiet across the sector. The disabled ships floated in space, their crews waiting to learn their fate. Admiral Jahe ordered them escorted to the edge of Talvaran territory with a simple message: leave and never return, or next time there would be no mercy. Warlord Victor's final transmission was bitter. We underestimated you humans. We thought you were just another soft species with big ships. We were wrong. This sector is yours. We won't contest it. This sector isn't ours, Jahe replied. It belongs to the Talvaran Collective. We're just visitors. But if you come back, we'll make you regret it. The Catherine fleet limped away, and the human ships returned to their position near Unity's promise. The Talvaran Council requested an immediate meeting. This time, when the human delegation arrived, there were no weapons restrictions, no shocked gasps. The Talvaran had learned something. Ambassador Taeyang greeted Admiral Jahe personally. His expression was complex, mixing gratitude with something darker. Loss, perhaps. The loss of innocence? The loss of a comfortable worldview? Admiral, the Talvaran Collective owes you an enormous debt. You saved millions of our people when you had no obligation to do so. We did what was right, Jahe said simply. That's all. The council assembled in the grand hall. This time, there was no ceremony, no elaborate welcome. Everyone wanted to understand what had happened and what it meant for their future. Counselor Biora spoke first. Admiral, we must confess something. We judged you harshly when you arrived. We saw your weapons and military discipline, and we thought you were primitive, violent beings. We were wrong. We apologize. You weren't entirely wrong, Jahe admitted. We are violent. We do understand war in ways you don't. But violence isn't the same as evil. Sometimes it's necessary. We're beginning to understand that, Taeyang said quietly. The Catherine have been active in this region for decades. We knew of them but dismissed them as an isolated problem. We thought if we ignored them, they'd ignore us. And they did, Jahe said. Until we showed up, our presence drew them here. In a way, we're responsible for putting you in danger. No, Counselor Dunn spoke up. She looked different from the angry, fearful person who'd left the summit days ago. We're responsible for our own vulnerability. We built a civilization without defenses because we were lucky enough never to need them. That wasn't wisdom. That was fortune. Fortune we mistook for superiority. Lieutenant Minji, standing beside Jahe, spoke gently. Counselor, your culture isn't inferior. You've achieved things we haven't. Your medical technology is centuries ahead of ours. Your environmental science is remarkable. You've built a peaceful, cooperative society that we're still trying to achieve. But we can't defend it, Dayan said bluntly. Everything we built can be taken by the first aggressive species that finds us. The Catherine would have destroyed us without effort if you hadn't been here. How long before others come? How long before humanity leaves and we're alone again? The question hung in the air. It was the core issue, the thing everyone had been avoiding. Young Su, the intelligence officer, pulled up a star map. The galaxy is vast, counselors. The Catherine aren't the only predatory species out there. There are dozens of aggressive empires, raiders, and conquerors. You've been lucky to avoid them, but that luck won't last forever. Eventually someone will find you, then what do we do? Taeyang asked. We're not warriors. We can't become you overnight. You don't need to become us, Jahe said. But you need to be able to protect yourselves. That means building real defenses. Military ships, trained crews, defensive networks. It's not about becoming violent. It's about being prepared. Will you help us? Dora asked. Can you teach us? Jahe looked at her senior officers. Captain Haewon nodded. Minji looked hopeful. Young Su gave a slight shrug that said, why not? We can help, Jahe agreed. But understand, this will change your society. A military requires different thinking. You'll need to train people for combat. You'll need to accept that sometimes violence is the answer. That's hard for peaceful people. Harder than watching our people die? Taeyang asked. We've learned that lesson. Admiral, painfully, we're ready to change. The Talvaran Council voted unanimously to request a defense treaty with Earth. The humans would provide military protection while training Talvaran crews and helping them build a real defense fleet. In exchange, the Talvaran would share their advanced scientific knowledge. It was the beginning of something larger. An alliance between species that approached the universe from opposite directions, but could learn from each other. Back at the monitoring station, Haiyan-Wu reviewed the battle data with Ji-Won and Sung-Ho. The recordings showed the human fleet's capabilities in detail. Every weapon discharge, every tactical maneuver, every moment of overwhelming superiority. I've analyzed their weapons thoroughly, Ji-Won said. Captain, the ship they call Indomitable has a main cannon they didn't even use in the battle. I've reviewed the power systems required to charge it. That weapon could destroy a planet. Sung-Ho looked shocked. Why would anyone build something like that? To stop people from attacking them, Haiyan-Wu said quietly. He was beginning to understand the human mentality. It's a deterrent. If everyone knows you can destroy planets, they think twice before threatening you. It worked on the Catherine, Sung-Ho admitted. They ran the moment they realized they couldn't win. Ji-Won pulled up her final report. Captain, I'm submitting this to the Council. The title is Why Human Scanners Scream, a Study in Prepared Peace. Haiyan-Wu, read through it. Ji-Won had done her usual thorough work, documenting every aspect of human technology and tactics. But the conclusion was what struck him. Humanity didn't come to our sector as conquerors, Ji-Won had written. They came as explorers. They carry enough weapons to destroy everything we've built, but they chose to save us instead. This is the paradox we must understand. The truly dangerous species is the one that can choose peace despite being capable of overwhelming violence. We feared their weapons, but we should have admired their restraint. It's good work, Haiyan-Wu said. But add something at the end. Add that we're lucky they came when they did. If the Kethring had arrived first, we'd all be dead. The humans' weapons saved us. Their violence, controlled and directed, protected our peace. The one nodded and made the additions. What do you think will happen now, Captain? Will we really become like them? No, Haiyan-Wu said. We'll become something new. They'll teach us to defend ourselves, but we're still Talvaran. We'll approach warfare the way we approach everything else, carefully, thoughtfully, hopefully without losing who we are in the process. I hope you're right, Ji-Won said softly, aboard the Indomitable. Admiral Jae-hee held a final meeting with her crew. They'd been in Talvaran space for 2 weeks now, and Earth was expecting reports. We've made first contact with a peaceful, advanced civilization, she summarized. We've established a defense treaty and military cooperation agreement. We've also encountered the Catherine Dominion and neutralized their threat to this region. Overall, I'd call this a successful mission. Captain Haewon raised her hand. Admiral, do you think the Talvaran will really be able to defend themselves? They're so far behind militarily. They'll learn, Jae-hee said confidently. They're intelligent, organized, and now they're motivated. Give them a few years and they'll have a respectable defense fleet. Won't match ours, but they won't need to. They just need to be strong enough that raiders think twice. And if something bigger than raiders comes? Young-Soo asked. Something we can't handle? Then we call for help from Earth, Jae-hee said. But that's why we're establishing the alliance. We're stronger together. They give us advanced science, we give them military protection. Fair trade? Lieutenant Minji looked thoughtful. Admiral, what did we learn from this? About humanity, I mean? Jae-hee considered the question. We learned that our violent history, the thing we're sometimes ashamed of, has value. We survived horrors and learned from them. The Talvaran never faced those horrors, so they never learned those lessons. We can teach them without them having to suffer the way we did. That's a gift in its own way. So our scars have purpose, Haewon said quietly. Always did, Jae-hee replied. We just didn't always recognize it. The human fleet prepared to depart for Earth, leaving behind a small contingent to begin training programs with the Talvaran. They'd return with more resources, more personnel, and plans for the long-term alliance, Ambassador Taiyang came to see them off personally. He stood in the docking bay of Unity's Promise and shook hands with Admiral Jaehee, a gesture he'd learned was important to humans. "Safe travels, Admiral. You've changed everything for us. I'm not sure if I should thank you or curse you for that." Jaehee smiled. "A little of both, probably. Change is hard, but you'll adapt. You're survivors, Ambassador. You just never had to prove it before." "One last question," Taiyang said. "When you first arrived, our scanners went crazy. The energy readings were so high our instruments couldn't measure them properly. They screamed warnings at us. Was that intentional? Were you trying to intimidate us?" "No," Jaehee said. "That's just how much power we need. Our ships run hot because they have to. We built them to survive anything we might encounter. The fact that they scared your scanners." The human battle fleet disappeared from Coalition sensors exactly 3 hours after Admiral Taesung gave the order. 200 warships simply vanished from the tracking networks as, if they had never existed, Commander Haiyan Wu sat in the cockpit of his reconnaissance ship, watching the power readings drop to almost nothing. His small vessel was the first to activate the ghost drive. Around him, his crew worked quietly. Every unnecessary system was shutting down. Life support was minimal. The ship grew cold. "Ghost drive engaged," his pilot whispered. "We're invisible." The ghost drive was new technology. Human engineers had developed it in secret over the past 5 years. It masked a ship's energy signature completely. To any sensor, a ship running on ghost drive looked like empty space, cold, dead, nothing, but there was a cost. With the drive active, ships moved slowly. They couldn't use weapons or shields. They were vulnerable. If the Vraxel found them like this, they would die before they could fight back. "All ships report ghost drive active," Lieutenant J1 announced from the flagship. "We're off the grid, Admiral." Taesung nodded. "Set course for the Ashfall Nebula. Maximum stealth speed." The Ashfall Nebula was a region of space that most pilots avoided. It was filled with radiation, debris, and sensor-distorting gases. Navigation was nearly impossible. Coalition strategists had marked it as impassable for large fleet movements. That was exactly why Taesung chose it. "Sir, are you certain about this route?" Captain Haijin asked quietly. She stood beside him on the bridge, watching the tactical display. "The nebula has destroyed entire squadrons before." "The Vraxel won't expect us to come through there," Taesung replied. "That gives us the advantage. Only if we survive the crossing, we'll survive." The fleet moved into the nebula like ghosts. The massive clouds of dust and gas swallowed them completely. Outside the viewports, everything turned into swirling colors. Red and orange and deep purple. It was beautiful and terrifying. Engineer Mi Young worked frantically in the engine room of the flagship. She had designed the ghost drive, but this was its first real test. 200 ships running silent through the most dangerous region of space. If even one drive failed, that ship would light up on sensors like a beacon. "How are the power levels?" she asked her assistant. "Stable on all ships. A few minor fluctuations on Destroyer Group 7, but nothing critical." Mi Young allowed herself a small breath of relief. So far, the technology was holding Dot in the Marine quarters. Corporal Dongjun checked his equipment for the 3rd time. He commanded a boarding unit. 50 Marines trained for close combat in space. They wore heavy armor and carried weapons designed to work in zero gravity. "You think we'll see action?" one of his Marines asked. Dongjun shrugged. "The Admiral doesn't take a fleet into enemy space without a plan. When we hit them, we'll hit hard. Be ready." The Marines around him nodded. They had been waiting for a real fight for years. All of them had joined the military to protect humanity. Instead, they had spent years sitting in reserve while aliens did the fighting. This was their chance. Hours turned into days. The fleet crawled through the Ashfall Nebula at a fraction of normal speed. The crews grew restless. Some questioned whether they were doing the right thing. They had disobeyed orders. If this mission failed, they would all be marked as traitors, but if they succeeded, They might save the coalition. Commander Hyun-woo's reconnaissance squadron moved ahead of the main fleet. His ships were smallest and fastest, even with ghost drives active. His mission was critical. Find the Vraxel fleet. Confirm its location. Report back. On the third day, his sensors picked up something. Contact, his pilot whispered. Multiple energy signatures. Thousands of them. Hyun-woo's heart pounded. Send a probe. I want visual confirmation. A tiny drone launched from his ship. It drifted silently toward the edge of the nebula. Its cameras activated. The image that came back made Hyun-woo's blood freeze. Ships, thousands upon thousands of ships. The Vraxel fleet stretched across space like a metal ocean. Massive battleships the size of cities. Carriers holding countless fighter craft. Cruisers and destroyers in perfect formation. Get me a count, Hyun-woo ordered. His tactical officer worked quickly. Preliminary count shows 11,400 warships. They're arranged in assault formation. Jump drives are charging. How long until they can jump? 18 hours. Maybe less. Hyun-woo immediately sent an encrypted burst transmission back to the admiral. The message was simple. Target confirmed. 11,000 plus? They're almost ready to move? On the flagship, Taesung received the report. He called his senior officers to a strategy meeting. We have 18 hours before they jump, he told them. Once they're in hyperspace, we lose our chance. We have to hit them now. Captain Sung-ho, commander of the carrier group, studied the tactical display. Sir, we're outnumbered 50-1. Even with the element of surprise, those odds are impossible. Not if we're smart, Lieutenant J1 said. He highlighted several points on the display. Look at their formation. They're arranged for a jump, not for defense. Their shields are at minimal power to conserve energy for the jump drives. Their fighters are still in the hangars. They're vulnerable. Hyjin leaned forward. We'd have to kill their command ships first. Take out their ability to coordinate. Turn it into chaos. Exactly, Taesung said. We won't try to destroy the entire fleet. We'll destroy their ability to fight as a fleet. Hit the command ships. Hit the carriers. Hit the communication relays. Make them blind and deaf. And then? Sung-ho asked. Then we hit them with everything we have. No mercy, no hesitation. We strike without warning and we don't stop until they're broken. The officers looked at each other. This was not how the coalition fought wars. The coalition valued honor. They believed in fair combat. They announced their presence before attacking. They offered surrender terms. Taesung was proposing something different. Something ruthless. A sucker punch delivered with overwhelming force. Some will call this dishonorable, Captain Hyun-woo said quietly. They can call it whatever they want, Taesung replied. I call it survival. The Vraxel weren't planning to give the coalition capital world any warning. They were going to jump in and start killing. Millions would have died. We're going to make sure that doesn't happen. Weapon Officer Biora spoke up. We'll need to time this perfectly. Our kinetic artillery takes 60 seconds from cold start to firing. If they detect us before we're ready, we lose the advantage. Then we make sure they don't detect us, Taesung said. We drop ghost drives at the last possible second. Weapons hot immediately. Fire everything on my mark. The meeting continued for hours. They planned every detail. Which ships would target which enemies. How the fighter squadrons would deploy. Where the kinetic artillery would strike first. Finally, Taesung dismissed his officers. Get your crews ready. Tell them the truth. We're about to start a fight that will be remembered for 1,000 years. Make sure they understand what's at stake. As the officers left, Hyjin remained behind. Second thoughts? She asked. Taesung shook his head. No, you? No, but Taesung, after this, everything changes. Even if we win, the galaxy will see humanity differently. They'll fear us. Good, Taesung said quietly. Let them fear us. Fear kept humanity alive for millions of years before we reached the stars. Maybe it's time the galaxy remembered that fear has its place. The fleet continued moving through the nebula, silent, patient, deadly. Ahead of them, the Vraxel fleet sat unaware. Their sensors showed nothing but empty space and the swirling gases of the nebula. They had no idea that death was approaching. Admiral Taesung stood on his bridge and watched the countdown timer. 14 hours until the Vraxel could jump. The human fleet would arrive in 12. The human fleet emerged from the Ashfall Nebula like predators from the darkness. 200 warships, running completely silent, appeared behind the massive Vraxel armada. The enemy had no idea they were there. Admiral Taesung watched his tactical display with cold focus. 11,400 enemy ships spread out before him. Their shields were down. Their fighters were docked. They were charging their jump drives. Every ounce of power devoted to the massive engines that would carry them to the coalition capital. They were completely defenseless. All ships in position, Lieutenant J1 reported quietly. Kinetic artillery crews are ready. Fighter squadrons are prepared to launch. Targeting solutions locked. Captain Haijin stood at her weapons console, her hand hovering over the fire control. Around the bridge, the crew was absolutely silent. They knew what was about to happen. Some of them looked sick. Others looked determined. This was not how wars were supposed to be fought. There would be no warning, no declaration, no chance for the enemy to prepare. Sir, we have a firing solution on the Vraxel command ship, Weapon Officer Biora announced from the gunnery station. It's a large one in the center of the formation. If we take it out first, it will take them at least 20 minutes to reorganize their command structure. Taesung nodded. Mark it as priority target alpha. Old dreadnoughts are to fire kinetic rounds on my signal. Kinetic artillery was humanity's gift to modern warfare. Massive railguns that accelerated tungsten rods to nearly the speed of light. The rods had no explosives. They didn't need any. At that velocity, pure kinetic energy did the work. One rod could punch through a battleship from bow to stern. Carriers, prepare to launch all fighters on my mark, Taesung continued. Captain Sung-ho, your squadrons will deploy hunter-killer drones immediately after launch. Target their communication arrays and carrier groups. Understood, Admiral. Sung-ho's voice came through the Pilot Jiwoo sat in her fighter cockpit, secured in the launch bay of the carrier. Her squadron, 50 of humanity's best pilots, waited with engines cold. Behind each fighter, racks of small drones were mounted. The drones were simple, fast. Each one carried a single explosive charge. They would swarm the enemy like angry insects. All fighters ready to launch, Jiwoo reported. Her hands were steady on the controls, but her heart was pounding. She had trained for this moment her entire life. Taesung took one long breath. He thought about the coalition admirals who had dismissed humanity as too violent, too reckless. He thought about the thousands of coalition citizens who had died because those admirals refused to listen, he thought. About the millions who would die if the Vraxel fleet reached the capital world. All ships, he said calmly into the fleet-wide channel. This is Admiral Taesung. Fire everything. The human fleet opened fire. 20 dreadnoughts released their kinetic rounds simultaneously. Tungsten rods, each one 30 meters long and moving at impossible speeds, crossed the distance to the Vraxel command ship in less than a second. The command ship exploded. Not from any bomb or missile, simply from the force of 20 metal rods punching through it faster than its structure could handle. The massive vessel, 3 kilometers long, tore itself apart. Chunks of debris spun away in all directions before the wreckage had even finished expanding. The human fleet fired again, and again, and again. Kinetic rounds screamed through space like the fist of an angry god. Vraxel battleships exploded. Carriers were split in half. Cruisers simply vanished in clouds of shrapnel. The enemy didn't even have time to scream. Launch fighters! Sung-ho ordered. Jiwoo's fighter shot from the carrier bay along with hundreds of others. The moment they cleared the launch tubes, they released their drones. Thousands of small hunter-killers filled the space between the human and Vraxel fleets. The drones scattered like a swarm, each one guided by simple but effective programming. Find a target. Fly into it. Explode. Vraxel communication arrays shattered. Sensor towers broke apart. Hangar doors were blown off their hinges. The drones didn't do massive damage, but they did something more important. They created chaos. Vraxel fleet is attempting to respond, J1 reported. Multiple ships are trying to raise shields. Some are powering weapons. Don't let them, Taesung ordered. All ships, continuous fire. Target anything that shows power signatures. The human fleet had trained for this. Every crew knew their role. Gunnery teams worked with mechanical precision, load, aim, fire, load, aim, fire. The kinetic artillery never stopped. Haijin coordinated the targeting from the flagship. Destroyers focus on their carrier groups. Cruisers take out their battleships. Dreadnoughts continue targeting anything with a command signature. The Vraxel tried to fight back. Some ships managed to get their shields up. A few even fired weapons. But they were disorganized, confused. Their command structure was gone. Individual ship captains tried to coordinate, but they had no overall strategy. The human fleet had a strategy. It was simple and brutal. Destroy everything. G-Wu single quotes S fighter squadron dove through the Vraxel formation. Vraxel fighters were beginning to launch, but slowly. Their pilots were scrambling to their craft, confused about what was happening. Weapons free, Jiwoo ordered her squadron. Hit the fighters before they can form up. Human fighters were smaller and faster than Vraxel craft. They darted between the massive enemy capital ships, firing missiles and energy weapons at the emerging fighters. Vraxel pilots died in their cockpits before they could even activate their shields. 3 enemy carriers destroyed, Buara reported. Targeting 4 and 5 now. The kinetic rounds kept falling. Each shot took only seconds to reach its target. The Vraxel fleet, built for conquest, was being torn to pieces. Some Vraxel ships tried to run. They fired their jump drives, desperate to escape. But jumping required time. Time to charge the drives. Time to calculate coordinates. Time they didn't have. Human destroyers hunted down the fleeing ships and killed them before they could vanish into hyperspace. Enemy fleet is in full retreat, J1 announced. They're scattering in all directions. Let them run, Taesung said coldly. Focus fire on the ships that remain in formation. Those are the ones still trying to fight. Corporal Dongjun watched from his transport ship as the battle unfolded. His marine unit hadn't been needed. There was no boarding action. The human fleet wasn't capturing enemy ships. They were destroying them. I've never seen anything like this, one of his marines whispered. Dongjun said nothing. He had seen plenty of combat simulations, practiced boarding actions and ship-to-ship fighting, but this wasn't a fight. This was an execution. 2 hours after the first shot was fired, the battle was effectively over. The massive Vraxel armada, 11,000 ships strong, had been reduced to wreckage and fleeing survivors. Thousands of enemy vessels were destroyed. Thousands more were damaged beyond repair. The ones that escaped did so in random directions, disorganized and panicked. The human fleet had suffered minimal damage. A few destroyers had taken hits. 3 ships had been destroyed when the Vraxel managed brief counterattacks. But compared to the devastation inflicted on the enemy, the losses were almost nothing. Cease fire, Taesung finally ordered. All ships, stand down from combat status. The bridge crew sagged with relief. Some of them were shaking. Others looked stunned. Haijin turned to face Taesung. Sir, we did it. The Vraxel offensive capability is gone. Taesung nodded slowly. He looked at the tactical display. Red markers, thousands of them, showed destroyed Vraxel ships. The space where a fleet had once gathered was now just debris and radiation. Casualty report, he said quietly. 47 ships damaged. 3 destroyed. Total crew losses are estimated at 4,200. 4,000 human lives. It was a terrible number. But Taesung knew the alternative. If the Vraxel fleet had reached the coalition capital, millions would have died. Maybe billions. Send a message to Coalition Command, he ordered. Inform them that the Vraxel threat has been neutralized. Transmit our location and wait for their response. Sir, they're going to be angry, J1 said carefully. Let them be angry, Taesung replied. We just saved the Coalition. They can court-martial me after they admit that. As the message went out, the human fleet held position in the debris field. Around them, the wreckage of the Vraxel Armada drifted silently. The war had just changed forever, and the galaxy was about to learn what humanity was truly capable of when pushed to the edge. Medical Officer Yujin moved through the crowded medical bay with tired efficiency. Wounded crew members filled every bed. Most of the injuries were minor, burns from overheated consoles, broken bones from being thrown during ship maneuvers, a few cases of severe wounds from the 3 ships that had been destroyed, but there was another kind of wound she was seeing, one that didn't show on scanners. I can't stop seeing it, a young weapons officer told her. He was physically fine, but his hands shook. I fired my station 37 times. Every shot killed people. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Yujin had heard similar words from dozens of crew members over the past 6 hours. They had won. The victory was total. But the cost of that victory was weighing on them. You did your duty, she told him gently. You saved lives. Coalition lives, human lives. But the way we did it, the officer whispered. We didn't give them a chance. We just killed them. Yujin had no answer for that. She gave him a sedative and moved to the next patient. On the bridge of the flagship, Admiral Taesung stood alone. The crew had been dismissed to rest. Only essential personnel remained at their stations. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of equipment. He stared at the tactical display. The red markers showing destroyed Vraxel ships seemed to glow accusingly. 11,400 ships. Probably 2 million crew members, all dead or scattered because of his orders. Sir, Coalition fleet approaching, the sensor officer called out. It's a large force, they're hailing us. Put them through. The main screen activated. Admiral Varric appeared. He was a Taurelian, a tall alien with blue skin and 4 arms. His face was furious. Admiral Taesung, Varric said coldly. You are under arrest for desertion, insubordination, and unauthorized military action. You will surrender command immediately and prepare to be taken into custody. I understand, Taesung replied calmly. I'm ready to face charges. Ready to face charges? Varric's voice rose. You abandoned your position. You took your entire fleet into enemy space without authorization. You started an engagement without Coalition approval. I destroyed a Vraxel armada that was preparing to attack the Coalition capital, Taesung said. I saved millions of lives. You had no proof of that. I had intelligence, human intelligence. The same intelligence you dismissed as paranoia. Varric's face darkened. You will be silent. Your command is terminated. Captain Haijin will assume control of the human fleet until proper Coalition officers arrive. The transmission cut off. Taesung turned to find Haijin standing behind him. She had returned to the bridge when the Coalition fleet arrived. I'm sorry, sir, she said quietly. Don't be. You have command now. Take care of the fleet. What will they do to you? Court-martial. Probably execution. I broke military law. They'll make an example of me. Security officers from the Coalition fleet arrived an hour later. They placed Taesung in restraints and escorted him off his own flagship. His crew watched silently as he left. Some saluted. Others looked away. Back at Coalition headquarters, Ambassador Dayun was fighting a different battle. The Coalition Council chamber was in chaos. Dozens of alien representatives shouted at each other. Some demanded that all human forces be expelled from the Coalition immediately. Others argued for severe sanctions. A few voices tried to defend humanity's actions, but they were drowned out. Order! The council chairman called out. We will have order! The chamber slowly quieted. Ambassador Yun, the chairman said, your military forces have committed a serious offense. What do you have to say? Dayun stood up. She had prepared for this moment. I have evidence to present to the council. Evidence of what? evidence that Admiral Taesung was correct, that the Vraxel were indeed preparing to attack the Coalition capital, that he saved millions of lives. She activated a holographic display. Intercepted Vraxel communications began to play. The translations were clear. The Vraxel had been planning exactly what Taesung predicted. A massive assault on the capital world. They had believed victory was certain. These communications were intercepted after the battle, Dayun explained. The Vraxel High Command is in panic. Their military capability has been shattered. The war is effectively over. That is not the point, one alien representative shouted. Humans acted without authorization. Because you refused to listen? Dayun shot back. We brought you intelligence. You dismissed it. We warned you of the threat. You called us paranoid. Admiral Taesung made a choice. He could follow orders and watch millions die, or he could act and save them. He violated military protocol. He saved the coalition. The argument continued for hours. Finally, the council chairman called for a vote. The question was simple. Should Admiral Taesung be executed for his crimes, or should he be pardoned? The vote was close. Very close. In the end, the council decided on a court-martial but not execution. Taesung would face trial. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The courtroom was packed every day. News of the human fleet's victory had spread across the galaxy. Public opinion was divided. Some saw Taesung as a hero. Others saw him as a dangerous renegade. Evidence was presented. Military experts testified. Coalition admirals explained why Taesung's actions were unacceptable. Human officers explained why those actions had been necessary. On the final day, Taesung was allowed to speak. I don't claim to be a hero, he said calmly. I broke military law. I disobeyed orders. I accept responsibility for that. But I would do it again, every time. When I saw millions of lives at risk and had the power to save them, I could not stand idle. If that makes me a criminal, then I am guilty. The judges deliberated for 2 days. When they returned, their verdict was unexpected. Admiral Taesung, you are found guilty of insubordination and unauthorized military action, the lead judge announced. However, given the circumstances and the outcome of your actions, this court sentences you to time served. You are officially pardoned, the courtroom erupted. Some aliens shouted in anger, others in approval. Human observers cheered. Furthermore, the judge continued when order was restored, the Coalition Council has voted to offer humanity a seat on the War Council with full strategic authority. Your tactics, while controversial, proved effective. Taesung stood quietly. He had expected execution. Instead, he was being pardoned. Promoted, in a way. That evening, Ambassador Dayun visited him in his quarters. You did it, she said. You changed everything. At what cost? Taesung asked. He looked out the window at the stars. I killed millions of beings. I gave no warning, no chance to surrender. I struck them down like animals. You stopped the war, I know, but I can't forget their faces. In my dreams, I see the ships exploding. I see the crew members dying. They were people. They had families, lives, and I ended all of that with a single order. Dayun sat beside him. War has costs, you know that? I do. But knowing it and living with it are different things. They sat in silence for a long time. Outside, the galaxy was changing. News of the human victory had spread everywhere. The Vraxel Dominion, their military shattered, was already sending peace envoys. The war that had lasted 30 years was ending. But more than that, the galaxy's view of humanity was changing. The older races had seen humans as primitive, reckless. Now they saw something different. They saw a species that fought with cold calculation, that struck without mercy when survival was at stake. That could be reasoned with and negotiated with, but should never be underestimated. Some aliens called for humanity to be embraced as equals. Others called for humans to be watched carefully. All of them agreed on one thing: humanity had proven they belonged among the stars. And they had done it in the most human way possible. Not through diplomacy. Not through honor, through overwhelming, ruthless, and undeniable force. 6 months after the battle, Admiral Taesung stood in the Coalition War Council chamber for the first time. The room was circular, with seats arranged in tiers. Representatives from dozens of species sat around him. Some nodded respectfully. Others watched him with barely hidden suspicion. He was the first human ever to sit on the War Council. Admiral Taesung, the council chairman began. The Vraxel Dominion has formally requested peace negotiations. They are offering full surrender terms. What is your recommendation? Taesung studied the data on his display. The Vraxel had lost more than just ships in the battle. They had lost their will to fight. Intercepted communications showed internal collapse. Several Vraxel worlds were already declaring independence from the Dominion. Accept their surrender, he said simply. But with conditions. Full disarmament. Occupation of their military production facilities. War crime tribunals for their leadership. Those are harsh terms, an alien admiral said. They were planning to exterminate the coalition capital, Taesung replied. These terms ensure they can never threaten anyone again. The council debated for hours, but eventually they accepted his recommendations. The war was officially over. After the meeting, several alien admirals approached Taesung. We would like to learn your tactics, one said. He was a veteran commander from a species that valued honor in combat. The way you fight. It is different from anything we have seen. You want to learn how to ambush an enemy? Taesung asked. We want to learn how to win, the admiral replied quietly. For 3 decades we lost battle after battle. You ended the war in 2 hours. If we had fought your way from the beginning, perhaps millions would still be alive. Taesung felt a weight in his chest. My way costs something. It costs honor. It costs mercy. It costs sleep, but it wins wars. Yes, it wins wars. Captain Haijin received a promotion to admiral. She now commanded the human fleet permanently. The fleet itself had grown. More ships were being built. The coalition was investing heavily in human military technology, especially the kinetic artillery and ghost drives. She stood on the bridge of her new flagship, watching as construction crews worked on expanding the shipyards. Sir, you have a visitor, her communication officer announced. Lieutenant J1 entered the bridge. He had been promoted to commander and assigned as her second-in-command. Congratulations on the promotion, Admiral, he said with a slight smile. Thank you, Commander. What brings you here? I wanted to discuss something. The Coalition is asking us to train their officers in human military doctrine. What do you think? Haijin considered the question. I think we should be careful. Our way of fighting works because of who we are. Humans spent thousands of years fighting each other before we reached the stars. We learned hard lessons. Other species might not be ready for those lessons. You think they'll reject it? I think some will embrace it too much. Others will reject it completely. Either way, the galaxy is going to change. She was right. Over the following months, Coalition military academies began studying the Battle of Krovan. That was what they called it now. The battle where humanity struck without warning and destroyed an armada. Some species adopted elements of human tactics. Quick strikes. Overwhelming force. No warnings. They saw the efficiency of it. Other species rejected everything about it. They called it dishonorable, barbaric. They said humans had brought darkness to the stars. Pilot Jiwoo became a celebrity. Her fighter squadron's combat footage had been analyzed by every military in the galaxy. She was offered teaching positions at prestigious academies. Instead, she chose to stay with her squadron. I'm a pilot, not a teacher, she told the recruiters. If you want to learn, fly with us. Some alien pilots did exactly that. They joined human fighter squadrons as exchange officers. Most of them washed out within weeks. The training was too brutal. The mindset too different, but the few who succeeded became some of the best. Pilots in the Galaxy. Corporal Dongchun's Marine unit was expanded into a full regiment. The Coalition had realized that boarding actions and ship-to-ship combat were areas where humans excelled. Human Marines were now deployed on Coalition ships throughout the fleet. Medical. Officer Yujin continued her work treating the psychological effects of the battle. She had written a report on combat stress that became mandatory reading for all coalition medical personnel. Winning a battle does not erase the cost of fighting it, she wrote. Every warrior carries scars. Some are visible, others are not. We must care for both. Ambassador Diyun was appointed as humanity's permanent representative to the Coalition Council. She had become one of the most respected voices in galactic politics, but she was also careful. She knew that humanity's new reputation was a double-edged sword. We must never forget what we did, she told a gathering of human diplomats. We showed the galaxy that we could be ruthless, efficient, deadly. That reputation gives us respect. But it also makes us feared. We must be wise about how we use that fear. The Vraxel Dominion collapsed completely within a year. Most of their worlds joined the coalition as independent members. The Vraxel military was disbanded. Their leaders faced trial for war crimes. Some in the coalition called for mercy. Others wanted harsh punishment. Taesung was asked to testify at the trials. He looked at the former Vraxel commanders and remembered the battle. The ships exploding. The millions dying. They planned genocide, he said calmly. They would have killed every being on the coalition capital if they had succeeded. They deserved justice, but not revenge. There is a difference. The Vraxel leaders were found guilty. Most received life sentences. A few were executed for the worst crimes. The war was truly over. On the anniversary of the battle, a memorial was built in coalition space. It honored all who had died in the 30-year war. Human, alien, and even Vraxel, Taesung attended the memorial ceremony. He stood before the monument, reading the names carved into its surface. 4,200 human names. The crew members who had died under his command, Captain Haijin, stood beside him. "Do you regret it?" she asked quietly. Taesung was silent for a long moment. "I regret that it was necessary. I regret every life lost. But no, I do not regret the decision. It was the right choice, even though it changed everything, especially because it changed everything. The coalition was dying. Someone had to act, and now humanity is forever known as the species that fights without mercy." Taesung nodded slowly. "That is our burden to carry? We showed the galaxy what we are capable of. Now we must show them that we can be more than just warriors." Across the galaxy, humanity's reputation had indeed changed. They were no longer seen as primitive newcomers. They were recognized as equals, feared by enemies, respected by allies. Human ships patrolled coalition space. Human officers sat on military councils. Human technology was integrated into fleets throughout the galaxy, but more than that, humanity had learned something about themselves. They had proven that when survival was at stake, when millions of lives hung in the balance, humans could do what was necessary. Not what was easy, not what was honorable. What was necessary. Councillor Rena, humanity's political leader, addressed the Coalition Council 1 year after the battle. "We are aware of our reputation," she said calmly. "Some of you fear us now. You see us as violent, ruthless. Perhaps you are right. But let me be clear. Humanity does not seek conquest. We do not desire empire. We want only what we have always wanted: to survive, to protect those we care about, to live in peace." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But if peace is threatened, if our survival is at stake, if innocent lives are in danger, then yes, we will fight. And we will fight with every advantage we possess. We will not apologize for that. It is who we are." The council chamber was silent. "However," Rena continued, "we also offer friendship, partnership. We will stand beside our allies. We will defend the coalition. We will use our strength to protect, not to conquer. This is humanity's promise to the galaxy." The response was mixed. Some species embraced humanity fully. Others remained cautious. But all of them understood one thing: humanity had earned their place among the stars. Not through diplomacy alone, not through technology alone, through action, through sacrifice, through the willingness to do what others could not. Late one night, Taesung sat in his quarters looking at star maps. He was planning training exercises for the human fleet. Even in peace, they had to remain ready. His communication console chimed. It was a message from his daughter. She was studying medicine on Earth. She had seen footage of the battle. She wanted to know if he was proud of what he had done. Taesung thought carefully before responding. I am not proud of the killing, he wrote. I am not proud of the destruction. But I am proud that when the choice came, when everything hung in the balance, humanity did not hesitate. We acted, we saved millions. That is what I am proud of. Not the violence, but the courage to act when action was needed. He sent the message and turned back to the star maps. The galaxy was at peace now. But Taesung knew that peace was fragile. Somewhere out there, new threats would eventually emerge. New challenges would arise, and when they did, humanity would be ready. They had shown the galaxy what they were capable of in war. Now they would show what they were capable of in peace, but the lesson was clear. Humanity had a new reputation.